thanks everyone for making time to actually, get some hopefully mind food before before real food. I wanted to sort of like introduce Rajat. Rajat happens to be, one of the OGs in the AI infrastructure space. I think he was the co-founder, one of the co-founders of Google Brain at Google. And he also co-founded and later went on to lead TensorFlow. And for those of you, who may or may not know this, TensorFlow is, the open source library and platform, which was seminally involved in the building and training of most models that we use today. Transformers, BERT, the decoder models, all of that stuff came up and went to scale on TensorFlow, right? And it's a real example of what, great infrastructure can do to accelerate development. And TensorFlow would kind of sit up over here, and then it would interface through the CUDA stack with GPU and through the XLA stack with TPUs, which was Google's internal tensor processing unit, which was kind of like the stuff that I was doing when I was at Google. So we had that overlap. So
Thanks, Poonacha.
yeah,
It's great to be here. Lots of exciting stuff. So hopefully we'll not bore you too much before you get to lunch.
right.
Let's get right.
So what we're here to talk about is actually, you guys have heard about all the amazing investments which is going in, trillions of dollars, right? Is what Bill said, right? Trillions of dollars. But at the same time, on the other side, you see, studies like what, the MIT guys said, and, who said that 95% of AI projects, agentic projects are doomed to failure, right? And Gartner also came out with this thing which said 40% are going to fail by 2027. So we have this huge paradox, right? And it's a paradox almost with three axes, if you will, right? One axis is the amazing amount of investment and spending, which is actually going towards this. The other axis is this sort of like slightly, shall we say, non-optimistic view, which came out of these two surveys. And the third thing, if I may, is just that, I mean, you and I are in the thick of this stuff. And we see amazing boosts to our personal productivity, as I'm sure most of you do when you interact with chatbots, agents, applications using this stuff, right? So on an individual level, we see this massive productivity boost. But at the enterprise level, right, there's some tentativeness in how this is being adopted. And we wanted to spend some time dissecting this, right, about how do you get from POCs to production. So that's the topic. And I wanted to sort of like, so Rajat also right now is the corporate vice president at Microsoft, and his responsibilities are AI inference infrastructure. So he's got this very, interesting vantage point, right, from which to actually judge how things were built in the past at Google and how, models are being consumed today. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about, what you see with usage patterns and yeah.
Yeah. So look, totally. There's this dichotomy. There's one side of, oh yeah, all these projects are failing, but on the other side, we keep investing trillions of dollars, or at least talking about those. There are differences there. Neither of them is probably right. The trillions of dollars, yes, there are lots and lots of investments happening, and a lot of that is real, but there's some hype as well that we're starting to see. Doesn't mean there's not reality in the middle. If you see, and just to share some numbers that are public, if you see all the different companies, all the hyperscalers that came out with numbers in terms of revenues, et cetera, they continue to grow, right? There's a lot of investment, not just investment, but investment on the enterprise side that's going in here. People are buying it, not just because, oh yeah, we are doing pilots. Pilots don't spend billions of dollars. I mean, yes, pilots do spend money, but there are real applications happening as well, right? On the Microsoft side, we of course have our copilots, which, on the coding side, GitHub Copilot, which I just talked about, leading to great productivity gains, but also the Office Copilot, et cetera, where people are seeing productivity gains across the Office spectrum, right, across your day-to-day jobs, and starting to see that in many other areas as well, right, whether it's sales and others as well. We are seeing, and a layer below, talking about inference itself, we are seeing huge growth in that, the number of people using it, the number of people using models in a variety of ways, both internally to Microsoft across the board. We are using it to build our products. We're using it to improve things across the board as well. and our customers too, right? There's huge growth there. So lots of exciting stuff happening across the board for sure.
In terms of the projects which are sort of like being used or POC'd at enterprises, I mean, it's almost the end of 2025 now. And in 2024, there was a lot of brouhaha about how in 25 AGI was going to show up, right? And I wanted to sort of say, as humans, we're sort of like, oh wow, AGI is going to show up. Maybe the thing that we're building today isn't great. It's got to be something great. Was there a mismatch of expectations, you think, which may have I don't know whether it helped or it hurt. I was just curious to know what you would think about it.
Yeah, look, there are always going to be these predictions, and it's very, very hard to get them right. There's definitely some hype in there that is saying, is AGI going to happen? Very likely at some point. Is it going to happen next year? I mean, 2025, definitely no.
Yeah.
At this point, we know for sure.
Yeah.
Is it going to happen sometime in the future? Likely, yes. When, it's going to be very hard to predict. You can see here different numbers, etc., from people. What the reality is that does help in some ways in that people are excited. Yes, let's do this. There's going to be some great stuff. But people don't know what to do with it because it's like, oh, what does that mean, right? There's no reality. There's a huge gap between that and where we are today. And yes, to be honest, what agents can do today is very, very real. People are using it in real stuff. But there are gaps in just basic infrastructure around that would really enable those. And that gap is really being filled right now. It's almost like, we're trying to build a building and we start to build all the pieces and we are on to the third, fourth floor. We're talking about a skyscraper with hundreds of floors there, but we forgot to build a foundation. And we're now starting to put in the foundation really in the right way.
That's a really interesting thing. I was actually trying to find a parallel, like thinking about it this morning. And the human brain, for example, evolved. But before the human brain had evolved, animal bodies, sinew, everything was already there. And finally, when the brain like clicked on, it had things to connect to, right? And it just needed to build the capability. Whereas with AI, I think we built the brain first, right? We built the brain first, and then the connective tissue of how you actually interact with tools. Why did an AI model ever need to like predict a calculation instead of calling a calculator? Well, it was hard for it to actually, it didn't have the infrastructure to call a calculator, right? And now all of those things are sort of increasingly getting fixed. And I think that makes the brain intelligence so much more consumable in the service of actual business applications.
That's right. I mean, the models are like this brain sitting in a vat that you need to connect to the real world in some manner. And the interesting bits are how do you connect that safely so all of the stuff that you want happens and all the stuff that you don't want doesn't happen either, because it's not like you just want to throw it out and let it do whatever it does, right? You want it to do it the right things only, right? It's in human terms, if you think about you hire an intern to come in and do some work, you're not going to give them keys to the kingdom and let them roam around and do whatever they want. You want some checks and balances to make sure things are right. That's the kind of thing that we're starting to build out, really.
That's exactly right. So, in fact, that's a great lead into to how we've started. So, by the way, just to introduce myself, I'm the CEO of this company called Classy.ai. We have a booth, I think, in that corner. We're tiny, we're fairly early stage. But we formed sort of like this worldview, which is to say that once you deploy these agents into production, to your point, right? How do you actually deal with the fact that they have variable behavior? Because the simplest way for me to think about it is agents are like people. I mean, LLMs themselves have stochastically variable behavior, but agents in response to prompts that they haven't seen are likely to spin up new functions and do things that you did not expect before you deployed them. That's actually different from any other tools that we've ever built in the past, right? And so, the thesis that we came up with was that pre-testing alone is insufficient. You actually have to have real-time supervision where you sort of like fuse observability and, in a sense, inside-out security, right? To make sure that these things are doing the right things, protecting your data, not deleting entries in your database, all of this stuff. So I don't know if how you think about all that.
Absolutely. It's part of as we think about the entire platform that we need for this, and at Microsoft as well in Azure, we're building a whole bunch of pieces to that platform and the pieces that we can plug in areas like yours in there as well. It is important for us to think about what kind of permissions does this have? And probably also think about, some of those standard things that we would think about software today or people today. Yes, we need to do that, and we kind of know that. But to what you said,
Yeah.
Poonacha, there are also things that we don't expect from software because of the stochastic nature. And being able to think about that, or at least understand that well, being able to look at what's going on and be able to make those decisions is going to be super, super important. And so we need all the right tools to build that foundation so we can really have these, agents keep getting better and
Yeah.
being deployed in a much
Yeah.
larger scale than they are today.
That's true. The ability to operationalize these things in enterprises is so very critical, right? And I think in many ways, this is an interesting dichotomy where enterprises are tentative sometimes deploying agentic solutions, but their employee workforce has no such hangups. They're sort of using AI in a very unsanctioned way to do stuff that they want. And this is sort of like this hidden thing that. So I think, yeah, it definitely makes an argument for enterprises to maybe lean in a lot more into the usage of AI because it's happening whether they like it or not, right?
Absolutely. Look, you started with this fact that a lot of projects are failing. Some of that's true. I think the numbers have a way of defining themselves
Yeah.
whatever. But it's about thinking of what makes them fail or succeed. And the other part is, look, early on, you do want to experiment a lot with things. So there's that extreme thing, which, like you said, maybe employees are experimenting with a whole bunch of things. It's fine if a few fail. What you don't want failing is you're putting $1 billion investment in something and that's failing.
Yeah.
So can you have cheap, fail fast projects that it's fine if half of them fail, but some of them succeed, and then you take them, nourish them, give them the right energy, and really figure out how to scale them up across the org.
Yeah.
So really thinking of different ways of doing that is super important. I think another thing from that study, I believe, was when you lean on, when you work with outside vendors or folks who are more experts in that space, projects are a lot more likely to succeed. So really looking at
Yeah.
what helps them succeed as
Yeah.
well. That's the kind of thing we need to look at as we want to make these succeed. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try it. We definitely want to open the world and
Yeah. Yeah.
really adopt this in lots of interesting ways so we can push the envelope really on
Yeah.
this.
How do you think about the workforce that's actually using these things? I mean, we were chatting about this, I think, a few days ago, right? And you mentioned something very interesting, which I want to like play back to you because
Yeah.
it's stuck in my head. You're like a 1x engineer paired with AI doesn't make a huge thing, but a 10x engineer is just going ballistic, right?
Yep.
So what do you do to actually get your workforce where they can all go ballistic, right?
Yeah, it's totally true, right? We're seeing, and one, the 10x engineer, and talking about engineers in this case, but applicable to every part of the organization, really. Those 10x engineers are more interested in trying out adopting the best tools out there and trying it out in the different workflows that they have and seeing what works and iterating rapidly. That's really the biggest differentiator there, right? One, encouraging the rest of the organization to try that out as well, and really pushing that with lots of different things, right? It could be incentives, it could be experiments that they do, talking about all the good stuff that's happening. Because sometimes, on the other side, you hear the hype and people are like, oh yeah, this is not really going to change this. I know how to code. I mean, yes, you do, but there are lots of new things that can help you, and so encouraging a lot of that, and that's something like in our org we still continue to do, right? I mean, we are a tech savvy company. We have a lot of amazing engineers, but at the same time, we still see the same kind of differences. And so we also have to encourage the same thing, and I think it's super important for enterprises to
Yeah.
really take that mindset, pick out the great examples, the ones that worked, and talk about them a lot more.
Yeah. I think basically, for a lot of enterprises, I think the adoption or non-adoption of these AI workflows is going to mean the difference between survival and not survival,
Absolutely.
right? I think because people who are able to harness it are able to really fly. Uh, Speaking for ourselves as a small startup, we were sort of AI first. And in a previous company, setting up Kubernetes infrastructure took months, right? But now we are able to set it up with literally 1/5 right? I mean, basically one guy. Okay, he's a really great engineer, but one guy
Yes.
with assistance, it just goes really fast. It's amazing, actually, night and day.
Totally. I mean, the 10x engineer is really becoming that 100x engineer
Yeah.
now, and that's possible for a lot more people, and we need
Yeah.
to really enable and push on
Yeah.
that, right? I think the other thing too, companies really surviving or not. Look, the use cases that are doing great today, by the way, are the ones where we are looking at just our core workflows, backend workflows, et cetera, and making them better. Those are the easy ones. And that's a no-brainer, right? But that's really improving the bottom line, and that should happen. How do you change the top line, right? That's where companies need to keep thinking about how does this drive their innovation? How does it drive their core products and make things better? If they don't, then a new startup is going to come out there and build that completely new thing. And over time, you'll get left behind, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a question of, okay, can we be 10% or 20% better? It's a question of survival for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I think, one thing that I've actually found, right, general in over organizations, leaders are often very, very busy keeping the existing business running, right? So having the ability to create a cell that can really push forward AI, not just from the point of view of building a thing which says, oh, I can perform this little thing. That's not enough. That POC is not enough. It's actually thinking more about production and deployment and compliance and all of the stuff which goes with it, right? That whole thing has to sort of show up. And I think creating that level of focus in each of your organizations, I think is probably going to make you one of the survivors, right? That's what I would actually, that's the realization that I've sort of like come to. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but that's just an opinion.
Absolutely. And part of that, going back to the previous thing, is leaning on tools that you can use in addition to, don't just think, okay, I'm going to take the API and do whatever.
Yeah.
In fact, an example is at some point people are trying to run models themselves. Now most people don't. They rely on APIs to just take care of that. Same thing goes for most of these platforms and tools. Yes, in some case you can build the tools or platforms, but in a lot of cases it's better to leverage things that are out there, adapt them to your workflows. That's your key differentiator. It's not the platform itself, right? Really focusing on those key pieces where you can differentiate and build on, that's what's going to matter.
Right. I think, one sort of like interesting thing is this technology curve has been so rapid, right? If you think about as recently as 21, right, which was 4 years ago, everybody was training. Pre-training was the thing. Everybody was doing pre-training using TensorFlow and after that PyTorch and stuff like that, right? So pre-training was the thing. That evaporated really quickly, right? And we can sort of like make the argument coming back to infrastructure, right? Is that, okay, there's money and talent, right? But beyond that, was there anything more? Was it infrastructure? Was it methodology? What led to the extreme success of like 100 pre-training companies reducing down to like a handful? Right. So
yeah, that's a great one. Look, at some level, the cost of pre-training just went up like crazy.
yeah.
Every new model that comes out in a few months is better than whatever model that you might have started with, even if you were fine-tuning, and even that's become hard. So forget pre-training from scratch. If you're trying to train a trillion parameter model, you cannot do that in 6 months on a small cluster. You can only do that in a few supercomputers out there that are there.
Yeah.
Right? It's really changed the game. So yeah, definitely lots of stuff changing, I guess. The platforms are the way to go and really building things here. But there's light at the end of the tunnel, I guess, right? We are seeing things move all the way to production, people deploying things, and I'm super excited about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rajat, and thank you, everyone. We're keeping you from your lunch. If you want to sort of like stop by and chat, we'll hang around here some more. And thanks again to Bill for there he is. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.